So in this video we'll be looking at place value. Now one of the reasons why many people struggle reading numbers is because we don't read numbers like we read words in a language. So for example, in English we read from left to right, in Arabic we read right to left, and in Japanese, Chinese or Korean they read up and down. Now in maths we use place value to help us read a number, and this place value starts at the decimal point. So if a number doesn't have a decimal point, i.e. whole numbers or integers, then the decimal point is at the end, just like a full stop. Now if we take a number in all its entirety, then we can see that from the decimal point, our first digit on the left is going to be our unit. Then we've got tens, and then we've got hundreds. Then the 6 would represent thousands. And if we just symbolize these in terms of powers of 10, the 5 represents 10,000, which has got 4 zeros. The 4 represents 100,000, which has got 5 zeros. So, and then the 3 represents millions, which has got 6 zeros. Then we've got 10 million, which has got 7 zeros. And then finally for the number 1 we've got 100 million. Next one after that would be a billion, and so 100 million has got 8 zeros. And obviously we're counting in powers of tens, or base 10 is what we generally call it in maths. Now the number from the right of the decimal point is what we call a tenth. So that's going to be, let's just change that and write down the words first. So this is going to be a tenth. So there is no such thing as a unit. The first one after the decimal point is what we call a tenth, and that's represented by 0.1. The 2 represents a hundredth, which is 0.01. The 3 represents a thousandth. It's going to be 0.001. The 4 represents 10 thousandths. So that's going to be 0.0001, and the 5 represents 100 thousandths. And it's really important that you are able to read these numbers by basically counting how many digits it is away from the decimal point. This is going to have 4 zeros and a 1. So a typical question will be as follows. So in these example questions we're asked to find the following numbers, write down the place value of the underlying digit. Now for this, one tactic I would generally use, now in terms of how we write the answer to this, sometimes we'll write it in numbers, sometimes we may be asked to write it in words. Now a tactic that I would strongly recommend is looking at the underlying number, which in this case is going to be 2. What I'm going to do is I'm going to replace all the other numbers with zeros. So here I've got 2, 0, 2, 0. And then obviously from this, what number is that? Well, that's going to be 20. And again, I could write that out in words, not a problem. So looking at number 2, again, I'm going to write this number and I'm going to keep the underlying number. I'm going to turn all the other numbers into 0. So it's going to represent 5,000. And whichever I want to write that down in words, then again, that is not going to be a problem. Now, in terms of question 3, again, I'm going to keep the underlying number, but for all the other digits, I'm just going to replace them with zeros. So here, this is going to be 50,000. And to make numbers easy to read, from the last digit, before the decimal point, every 3 digits will have a little comma, and that just makes it easy for us to read. So looking at this one here, I've got 0, 0, 0, 2, 0, which basically just gives me 20 again. Here with number 5, I've got 1, and all the other digits turn into 0, so that's just going to represent 10. Question 6, I keep the underlying number, and all the other numbers become zeros. So that's going to give me 0.2. And again, I can ignore any zeros after the decimal point, like at the end. Then question 7, again, I'm going to keep the underlying number. All the other digits turn into zeros. So that's just going to be 0.0005. Now it's important that you're able to read this. So this would be a tenth, hundredth, thousandth, and so this would be 5 10,000ths. Or more commonly known as 50,000th. Stick a TH there. And then for question 8, again, I keep the underlying number and I replace all the other digits with zeros. So that's just going to give me 20. And then finally for question 9, I'm going to write keep the underlying number, all the other digits become zeros, and so that there is my final answer. Then moving on to this next question, so it's here, it says state the place value of the digit 4 in each of these numbers. So again, I'm going to do exactly what I did before, is I'm going to keep the 4 and just replace all the other numbers with zeros, and making note of where the decimal point is. So that number there, I'm going to lose the zeros at the front and at the back. So here, this is just going to give me an answer of 0.4. For question 2, again, just going to keep the 4, all the other numbers become zeros, so that then becomes 400. This one, 004000, so that then becomes 4,000. Then for question 4, I've got 0.0040, which is just 0.004. And for question 5, 0.000000.00, and that's going to be, just to make it easier, it's going to be 4 million. So 4. Now, what is important is make sure your little commas don't look like decimal points, because then that will change the actual value of the number. And finally, for question 6, we've got 0.000.0000400. Again, I can cancel those two zeros, give me a final answer of 0.0004, and there is my final answer. Now again, just be wary and make sure that you're happy with how you're writing your answer. Sometimes you can get away with writing your answer as in forms of using digits. Sometimes you might have to represent your answer using words. Now another thing you might get asked is to write place value as a fraction or what they represent. Now sometimes this may be in the case of words, or sometimes it may be in the form of you writing figures. Now the key thing to remember is that when you are working from the left of the decimal point, that you're generally dealing with whole numbers. So for example, if I just quickly write down what these from the decimal point, so the first digit after the decimal, or before the decimal point I should say, on the left of the decimal point is going to be units. Then we've got tens, then we've got hundreds, then we've got thousands, then we've got tens of thousands, then we've got 100,000s, then we've got millions, then we've got tens of millions, and then we've got hundreds of millions. And obviously that then pattern continues. So you have units, which has got a unique name, then you have tens, and then you have hundreds, and then it moves to another unique name. So let me just write millions here. Now we count in base 10. So basically, as you're moving from units to tens, you're multiplying by 10. So tens to 100, you times that by 10. Hundreds to 1,000, you time that by 10, and so forth. So every time you jump from one place value to the next, going from left to right to left, you are going to be multiplying by 10. So let me just finish writing this up. So here we're timesing by 10, and then times that by 10, and we get so. So the next one will again be multiplied by 10. So from the decimal point of this, it's important that you're able to establish. Now, one question that tends to be more popular when it comes to exams is to write down the value of a number that is being highlighted. So whether it be a number 9 or an underlying number, that's entirely up to you. So for example, this number here just represents 9. This 8 represents 8 tens, so it can be written as 80. This 7 represents hundreds, so that's going to be representing 700. This represents 6,000. This represents 50,000. This represents 400,000. This 3 represents 3 million. Now it's important you recognize how many zeros there are. And again, to make this easier, that's why we have commas after every 3. And so it makes it easy for us to read. So this side is the 1,000. So we read this as it is. So 400, and then the number of zeros would be thousands. Then it moves on. So here, this would be 3. And then because I've got 6 zeros following it, it'd be 3 million. This would represent 20 million. And this one would represent 100 million. So if a question asks you to write down the place value of a number or a particular digit, or it's underlined, then this is basically how you would answer. Now, if I was to add up all of these underlined numbers, then I would end up with the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So make sure you understand what questions are actually being asked. Now this leads us on to decimal values. So when we're looking at points on the left, going from the decimal point, we're going in towards the right. Now this 5 represents a tenth, which I can represent as 1 over 10. The 6 represents a hundredth. The 7 represents a thousandth. The 8 represents 1 10,000th, or should I say 1 10,000th, and 9 represents 100,000th. So in other words, we get these. Now in terms of how we say this now, as mentioned, if we're going in from right to left, we're multiplying by 10. So going in the opposite direction, we're going to be dividing by 10. So here, to get from 1/10 to 100th, we're dividing by 10. And here, we're dividing by 10. Here, we're dividing by 10. And as you can see, in the red fractions you can see on the screen, we're increasing the number of zeros by 1 as we go along. So a similar question as answered before, if I want to represent 5, what does that 5 represent, or what is it as a fraction? That would be 5, and then it would be tenths. What does this 6 represent? Well, this 6 represents 6 100ths. This 7 represents 7 1,000ths. This 8 represents 8 10,000ths. And this 9 represents 9 100,000ths. So again, if a question asks you, then it's these green fractions, which is what you would need to answer your final question. Now, I will put some practice questions in the description below, along with their answers, so you can check your understanding of everything that's covered in this video.